every group that I know of that claims to represent small businesses actually are anti-small business and are funded by Fortune 500 firms. So the National Federation of Independent Business is funded by a small number of Fortune 500 firms. They've opposed everything I've done for a decade. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is funded by large corporations. The National Small Business Association is funded by Fortune 500 corporations. Every group that you would think is there to help small businesses, like the Small Business Administration, are actually just the opposite. They lobby for legislation to help large corporations, and I think they're anti-small business. So as far as I know, and if I'm wrong, someone please let me know, the American Small Business League is the only national small business organization that's not funded by Fortune 500 firms, that doesn't take money from Fortune 500 firms. So that's my statement. If anyone thinks I'm wrong, let me know, but I don't think I am.
And people should go there and join, but I mean, get your press releases out to their friends.
People, can join the American Small Business League, donate. We're filing lawsuits almost every month. I've won, countless legal battles against the federal government. And the U.S. government is the largest purchaser of goods and services on this planet. And there's a law that says they should do 23% with small businesses. That's a huge chunk of money. That should be around $230 billion a year. We think small businesses are getting maybe, 1/10 of that. And if you're a small business, the government buys what you're selling. You need to look into this, go online and do some research. But whatever you're selling, they're buying it. And by law, they should do 23% with small businesses, and they're not hitting it. So it's a huge opportunity for legitimate small businesses. But we need to get the story out in the media more. So small businesses all around the country need to contact all the local media and talk to them about this, because these large corporations that are hijacking all the small business contracts, those, as you know, Alex, are the large corporations that really control, have so much control in Washington, so much control in Congress. And those are large corporations that fund the big lobby firms on K Street in Washington. So they're opposing us. So we're a small trade group, out of Petaluma, California. We're up against the defense and aerospace industry. And they just spend hundreds of millions of dollars.
But it's kind of a David versus Goliath, because I've seen you have a lot of successes. Because what's happening is so outrageous, you're more of just a whistleblower. You're raising the alarm. And I want to expand on this and talk about some of the new lawsuits. But it's not just small businesses now. These globalists state they want a post-industrial Europe, U.S., Canada, Australia, where we had traditional freedoms, to bring us to our knees. I mean, they've made those statements, Maurice Strong, Ted Turner, countless others. We saw, 3 years ago, or 2.5, $22 billion of taxpayer money in a bailout to GM to move it to Eastern Europe, Mexico, Brazil, and the biggest factories of China. So it's not just small businesses targeted, even things like GM, the heart of Detroit, the heart of Michigan, once our industrial base, the factories that made our tanks, that's being offsourced. Even the parts for weapons are being made in China now. I mean, This is really not just the establishment trying to make money. They're bending over backwards to shut down business in this country, period. Why do you think that's happening, or do you have any comments on my statements?
Well, you've got these, corporate giants here in America that are just trying to maximize profits. They're not trying to create jobs. They're not trying to help the U.S. economy. They're trying to make as much money as they can and pay as little income tax as possible. And to tell you the truth, they can do anything they want to do, seems like to me. I've never seen a bill not pass Congress that the large corporations wanted, and yet you can't get anything past Congress to help small businesses. I've been trying for a decade. Think about this, for 10 years, I've been trying every day, all day long, to get the federal government to quit giving small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms for 10 years. And it's impossible getting legislation through Congress because these large corporations control all the committees. But
well, if small businesses are 90% of the new jobs, and I've seen that number, the government admits that, then you'd think 90% of the contracts need to be filled by small businesses. But I mean, if you go to a government building, a government office to file something, all you see is big national vendors in there. I mean, it's a joke.
Oh, yeah. I was in Washington a year ago looking at the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. When I turned to walk out of the room, I saw a big sign wall that said the Boeing Theater. And if you're in Congress to talk to a congressman, senator, and you're waiting out there in the lobby, all the magazines that are there to serve Washington are full-page ads from the defense contractors. So the defense contractors control all the print media in Washington, they're the major advertisers. In fact, my feeling is, I bet you agree with me, that even major news outlets, national television news outlets, have all these ads, institutional ads from the Fortune 500 corporations, companies like Lockheed, Boeing, and Northrop, that we can't buy their products. Why are they advertising on CNN?
No, I've talked about that a lot. You will see ads for cruise missiles and for ICBMs and for Raptors and again, I see ads on 18-wheelers all over the place now. I actually shot a video on this on the road when I went to Bilderberg in Virginia a few weeks ago, and we saw it on truck after truck with drones all over them. And again, that's just propaganda. But the point you're getting at is the other side of this is it's a payoff that you're seeing all these defense contractor ads to the media, because like you said, they're not running that ad so somebody buys a Predator drone or a Raptor or an Apache helicopter or a cruise missile. This is a payoff to the media to not criticize it because a third of your ads are defense contractor ads.
Absolutely. In fact, I was watching CNN on Sunday, and every ad is from the oil industry. It's either from the American Petroleum Institute or Chevron or ExxonMobil. CNN just seems like they're just owned by the oil and gas industry, and they won't do any stories that are critical of the oil and gas industry. I've had my story killed 100 times because a major media outlet has ads for Lockheed and Boeing running, and those stories are killed. I had a story killed by NBC 10 years ago because NBC is owned by GE, which is a major government contractor to make the jet engines for a lot of fighter jets. So there's so much collusion between these large companies. When you talk about these trucks with the ads for the cruise missiles, what the defense and aerospace industry is trying to do is get people to think that defense spending and patriotism are tied together. They're not. And people need to realize that the Boeing and Lockheed and defense contractors try to wave the flag in their ads and make people think, oh gosh, we make cruise missiles, so we're patriotic, and you should support us and support America, be patriotic. So people need to understand defense spending and patriotism are not one and the same. And these big defense contractors are cheating our country out of billions of dollars. They're cheating small businesses out of billions of dollars. And it's just really unfortunate you can't get this story in the major newspapers around the country. But
Lloyd, I want you to get into the new news, the reason you're here today, and the lawsuits and the latest things, the latest battles, things that are on your radar screen. But before we do that, I want to bring up something that I've never asked you here on air. You started out your career, you're from Texas, working for a legendary gentleman, Bob Bullock. And you could say what you wanted about Bob Bullock, but he really did try to build things up in Texas. He did try to create jobs. I mean, I know a lot of people that knew Bob Bullock, and that was really what he was focused on in the legislature. That was a kind of an old line, type. You could even say boss hoggish. How is the old style system different from what we have today? Because, you've been doing this a while. I mean, am I wrong to say things are getting worse? They're getting more corrupt? What would Bob Bullock say about all this?
We can't say what he would say, right? You can't say it. I loved him. He was my hero and my mentor, and I learned so much from him. And he was just a wonderful person, and I think about him all the time. He would think this is all, just a load of baloney. He wouldn't use those words, but
well, I mean, that's the thing. Even old line politicians weren't perfect, but they weren't as just totally cutthroat. I mean, nowadays, like you said, anything can be done. We have NATO saying they command the military, and Congress says, okay. We've got the president saying he'll kill citizens whenever he wants, and they're announcing troops on the streets and TSA. I mean, it's just so crazy. Why do you think this is happening?
Because, to tell you the truth, the public is, they're like sheep. They're just like sheep. If you go out and talk to people, as you've probably done, they don't really understand what's happening. You can't get the truth about what's happening from watching ABC, NBC, and CBS, and CNN, and Fox. That's not the truth. That's their slant. But people are naive. And I'll tell you something, and I think you probably found this to be true. The abuses that have been uncovered are so horrendous that people can't believe it. One of my biggest problems is when I call a reporter and say, hey, I've uncovered $1 trillion in federal contracting fraud, click, they hang up. They can't believe that it's true. That it's just beyond their belief. I talk to people all the time that it's just beyond their belief. You talked about what's going on currently. The Russian-owned defense contractor just got $370 million worth of contracts in America that's supposed to go to small minority-owned companies. That's unbelievable. You know, a state-owned defense contractor that sells weapons, you know, to terrorists all around the world is getting $370 million in U.S. government small minority-owned contracts. You won't see that on CNN. You're not going to see it on ABC, NBC, or CBS. You just won't see that, right? It's hard for people to believe. But
well,
again,
exactly. In fact, we're going to play a clip of this right now since you brought that up, because I meant to play it on last week's show. I came across, well, I was looking for an article again because listeners didn't believe me that $2.3 trillion had disappeared at the Pentagon in just the 5 years before Bush got into office. The last number I saw last year, it was over $6 trillion. I always say billion. It's hard to say trillion. Just missing.
More money for the Pentagon when its own auditors admit the military cannot account for 25% of what it already spends.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
$2.3 trillion with a T. That's $8,000 for every man, woman, and child in America. To understand how the Pentagon can lose track of trillions, consider the case of one military accountant who tried to find out what happened to a mere $300 million.
We know it's gone, but we don't know what they spent it on.
And their own Pentagon bookkeepers will point it out that it's being stolen, and they're told to shut up. A lot of the investigators got killed in Iraq and Afghanistan, got fragged. We've got tens of billions in pallets of money disappearing.
That's right.
Now a lot of our weapons are being bought from the Russians. I mean, it's many of the components are made in China. That if we're going to have this big war machine, sure as hell make it here. I mean, that is law. I mean, the point is, it's gotten so crazy that people always said, Alex, the elites aren't in control like you think they are. They're out of control, robbing and stealing. Well, in a way, that's true, and I always disagreed. It's organized, but only at a certain level. They think they're organized. They're obsessed with controlling us, but who they're not controlling is themselves. I think they're going to collapse things if we don't start reversing this, but I'm ranting. You were saying that's right. You know about the trillions missing.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, there was a story that I'm sure you're aware of 2 or 3 years ago. A military transport flew to Iraq with $12 billion in cash, shrink wrap in $100,000 bundles. They called them bricks. They lost $9 billion. They lost it. $9 billion in cash. That story should have been on the front page of every newspaper and magazine in the country. It should have been on national television, you know, every day, over and over. Nobody even heard of it.
And by the way, it was in a few papers, but just, $9 billion this year got lost. I have family in the military. And when I brought this up, I'm talking about officers that were over there, they got very upset. One said, I don't know how you know that, better watch it. And another admitted it. Even privates, they were given money so they wouldn't talk about the generals taking hundreds of millions. The privates would be given $20,000, $30,000 in cash in a bag. Colonels were given $300,000, $400,000, $1 million. And they used it to corrupt the troops in Afghanistan and Iraq. Now the troops don't complain when they're told to grow the opium. So they took that money and literally, it's like in that HBO series that I watched that was very historically accurate called Rome. And they hire the centurion in one neighborhood, Caesar does, to go around and corrupt everybody. He goes, well, you have people sell out cheap. I should have you do all my corruptions. I mean, that $9 billion, because I asked family about that and also seen some articles, that was handed out, parts of it, to the troops. And then they told them later, you better watch it if you see us doing bid scams, because you took that $30,000 last year, private. I mean, wow, that is cold-blooded.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you something funny. If you do research about what the federal acquisition budget is, you'll find it's around $500 billion. The truth is, it's twice that. It's $1 trillion. So Congress talks about it being $500 billion. Stories in the media talk about it being $500 billion. I've seen reports, I've seen data. The head of the GSA under the Bush administration talked about it. It's actually twice that. And that's the money that's characterized as
white,
top secret.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's white money, there's black money. It's one